All right. Welcome to Birthing the Gifts. I am clinical psychologist Dr. Kyla Holmes. Here at Birthing the Gifts, we provide a safe and compassionate space to grow your gifts. In this interview series, we discuss the process of giving birth to your God-given gifts. And today we have with us Wesley Peters. Thank you for joining us, Wesley.
What's going
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Wesley, I feel like, what about knowing you for at least a year and a half, if not going on 2 years now? And y'all, when I met Wesley, that was at a critical point in my life. So I always appreciate Wesley. It was personally and professionally. I was trying to figure some things out. So Wesley is creative, you're innovative. I feel like you have vision. And when I came across that blessed me personally and professionally. So I knew when I started launching this series, I was going to have to get you as a part of this It's a Process media series. So that's what we're here to talk about today is your process and learning more about you. So
And now,
Wesley, when I met you, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but I'm always gonna do this. Like, I appreciate you for like the steps that you've taken to like you since I met you, you've always been like a very crisp person. You're a very much goal oriented person. Like, let's get it done, but also let's, you know, learn and express new muscles. Like, you've always brought that side, I feel like, of the psychology conversation that, like, I'm gonna say I miss it sometimes a lot. Oftentimes I missed it. So you bring it in a way that's like fresh, and it's a culmination of a lot of things, and I respect it. So you moving with it. I know I'm stammery right now because I'm really methodical with what I'm saying, because you I don't know, you birthed the gift, but it's so spiritual what you ended up bringing to the forefront, and I'm proud. Like, thank you.
I appreciate that. Those are some kind words, Wesley, because that's really what I feel like God has put in my spirit is to not only birth something, but be focused on the process and obviously the spiritual side of it and all of it. So I appreciate you just giving voice to that, giving language to that. I appreciate it. So I hope that as we go throughout this conversation today, other people are inspired by a conversation. And when they just hear us talking about the process, talking about your process, they'll be inspired as well, just like we have both been inspired by knowing each other. So, Wesley, when I feel like I cross paths with you, like what I saw first is just kind of like I said earlier, is your creativity through words, through music, through writing, just all of that. So, for you, at what point in your life did you know that somehow creativity, writing, music, something like that was going to be a part of your journey in your life?
Um, so I can't help, you know me, I can't help but spin what you asking me back to. I'm just thinking about my childhood, but I'm also thinking about where I am today and what's in front of me in terms of education. Cause I I would like to like create the kind of education and the kind of openness to creativity that I wish I would have had. Like, I remember when you had these, and I don't know any terms, so I'm not gonna try to use any terms, but I know certain involvements that I was in. You had gifted and talented, but then when I really think about what that was, there was like different people on different ends of the spectrum coming together, having these conversations with a teacher who was supposed to creatively lead them into, you know, whateverness. So from as long time as I can remember, I was going to bed listening to soul, but then like Maroon 5 too. And I'm really looking into the lyrics when Neo was just dropping bangers. I'm listening to the sad songs and I'm like, what's going on? Is it that I don't know. I was really connected to the emotion of it all, and then
Mm.
going through my process. Some of it was just I guess being misunderstood in certain environments.
Mm.
A lot of it brought forth writing, and ooh, that sounded good when they said it like that over this
Mm.
tempo. But then as I kind of get older and go through my process or whatever the case may be, as a part of my journey, not necessarily that I chose, just walking my feet, like you meet these people who break down music in a different way. So no matter what aspect of life I'm in, whether I'm in a political campaign or, you know, talking to my grandma, music is going to get incorporated back in those conversations. And you don't have to listen for it because the birds are always going to chirp. You know what I'm saying? When they
Mhm.
don't chirp, then it's like, okay, where did they go? So are they migrating today, or
Mhm.
do they think it's cold too? Like what's going on?
Mhm.
So um
Mhm.
I I don't know. I'm going on a mini tangent right now, but
No, I feel where you're going because I feel like what you're saying is that music has always been with you, no matter what you're doing, no matter what aspect of life. You say political campaign, talking to your grandma, going to sleep at night, waking up in the morning, going to
mm-hmm.
school, whatever you're doing, music has been a part of that. And it sounds like you're saying it's caused you also to reflect, like, right? Like you connected with it emotionally, but it sounds like you also connected with music intellectually, like you were also reflecting on the lyrics as well. Is it?
Like you just brought it full circle. Like literally this past week I had been picking back up one of the projects that I had started working on in 2019 called Bullies. That book came about when I was on like basically trying to teach kids the process of writing a book, because they asked me. That was the project that came out of the very first class that asked that Bullies was. So as I was really editing and comparing this story to my first story, I love my
Mhm.
first story, The Plant Doctor, but at the end of the day, when I saw that kindergarten student sleeping in that class, I was like, okay, great book. I'm
Mhm.
going to make sure forever for the rest of my life, is if I can, and if I can, I need to figure out how to. Music needs to be involved with it. So this
Okay.
this process of how I wrote this story, Bullies, and kind of where it is today, it has everything to do with that. And the reason why I said that is because you said something earlier just about that made me bring it, all back together. And it's this journey of birthing gifts, like this
Mhm.
journey of birthing gifts. What I literally wrote down right before this conversation was, check my pockets, check your pockets, check your pockets. Because what happens is you'll birth them, but then they need nourishment. And we've had these,
Mhm.
they need care, they need attention. So as an entrepreneur versus just the creative, because as a creative, I see year five on day one. Like as soon as it
Okay.
starts, I see the big thing, and I see
Mhm.
the whole carnival circus. Like I see
Mhm.
everything going on, all the lights, everything. It just makes sense. But then
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur, and I think that's a heavy word, as a person who wants to see their vision come to pass, like
Mhm.
then going through those footsteps and those motions. So
Mhm.
it's birthing a gift is like, I respect it because it's so much in terms of
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
fostering and care.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Because that's what's part of the process, right? When you do have to foster it and nurture it and cultivate it and care for it. So it sounds like you understand that it's one thing as a creative or a visionary to have a vision in mind, but it's another thing to walk that thing out and now execute it and actually make it really come to fruition. So for you, like, when did you feel like when you were listening to music coming up? It's like you were listening to music. I can see you as a little young fella. listening to your music. But when for you did you start to have a vision of knowing this could turn into something, right? Like, I don't know if that was when you were in college, when that kind of, when a vision came up in your mind of what it could look like, and then you started to execute it. Like how did you get to that spot?
So I would say, so two things. First one, my mom always just, she was look it up. She was look it up. I would
Mhm.
ask her a question, look it up, ask her. So as that goes on, and I'm attracted to music too. So it don't matter what the question is, it's just the question in the world that I had. And she's like, look it up. How do you spell this word? Look it up. So as I'm looking up just concrete definitions and what does it mean, as well as checking the sources. So it's certain things
Mhm.
that question as like, okay, I'm cool with this Wikipedia answer, but then it's like, okay, I really want to do a scholarly breakdown in on this subject. And it might be as simple as, I was watching College Hill with my cousin Desiree, and Ray J saw two ducks in the water because he got kicked out of school after graduation. He got kicked out, so he's like, "Man, what do these ducks mean in the water? Like, what is that?" So I'll go through those motions too. But so my mom, to answer your question, she was telling me to just look it up. The other piece to that, I was in college in Iowa, like, and they didn't have any kind of food that I actually wanted to eat. Um,
Mhm.
Desiree's mom came down because Desiree went to school with me too. She was like, Wesley, why don't you cook? So me and my friend, my roommate at the time, Bobby, ended up cooking some chicken and some fish. It was just, we were both from the South. He's from Louisiana, I'm from Arkansas. He made the fish, I made the chicken. We ate it. We was like, you know what, we could do something with this. And it wasn't
Mhm.
too much thought outside of that. I think some of the best things happen right at that moment, but then
Mhm.
um the nurturing part after that. So we were on campus selling food. It was
Mhm.
a lot of stuff in terms of politically that we shouldn't have been selling food on campus, like that, but it birthed
Mhm.
a sense of, if you do it, you know what I'm saying, people either gonna say yes or no. So
Mhm.
same things translated for me over everything else that I've ever done. Because when it has,
Mhm.
with sales, because one part is creative, and in that instance the cooking part is creative, but then the sales, like, they would come back from parties in college, and McDonald's was open, Wendy's was open, or I could go to B&W Southside Cooking and get
Mhm.
a chicken and waffles plate, give me some fries, you know what I'm saying, do y'all
Okay.
a piece of fish on the side, like y'all got shrimp now, like, so going through all of those motions, I reflect on that all the time, because that's what I was doing when I was like 19 years old. Like, not to say that that's
Mhm.
necessarily a young age to do stuff, because I don't think it's about age either. I think just it's about the vigor that you choose to have
Mm.
over
Yeah.
whatever subject.
Right. So that vigor can be there at whatever age. I like how you're highlighting that. You highlighted several things, Wesley. One, I just want to just highlight what you said, that last piece. It's just the vigor. Are
Mhm.
people enthusiastic about it? Are you persistent? Do you have that energy to go ahead and pursue what you're pursuing? You could be 10, you could be 15, you could be 30, you could be 50, like however old you are, just had a quality about you, just saying, okay, I'm going to go after this thing. I'm going to pursue it. So I like that. I do want to circle back to something that you said. You talked about your mom told you to look it up. So I
Mhm.
liked it. It seems like that helped to shape part of how you pursue and birth your gifts is, let me look it up, let me check my sources, let me go after this. Was it anything else that you could think about that helped to prepare you? And then, we're still being prepared, but certainly from your upbringing or from your college years, where you could say, this really helped to prepare me and equip me. It gave me the mindset that I need to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So for me, in looking it up, I became an over analyzer, if that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
Over, like I
Yeah.
would over
Like
analyze.
analyze things. Uh-huh.
I would to the point to where I'm trying to put a scientific method behind everything before I even attempt it the first time. Where it's like, no, it's like sometimes I have, for instance, a friend, a LB who I can't remember what branch it was, but he talked about, it might have been the Navy, but he had to, they just threw him in the middle of the ocean. You know what I'm saying? And it's a part of the process where you gotta, some people, if you want to swim with sharks, you learn what you learn, but at some point you gotta go swim with sharks. And that's not necessarily what I'm saying I'm trying to do, but I would analyze something so much to the point, for instance, if I'm playing basketball, I'm looking up the highlights, I'm slowing it down to make sure I get the exact motion that they did when they were doing this behind the back move, because I want to make sure that I get, but then sometimes it's about just timing and doing it,
Mm-hmm.
stepping out. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think with looking it up and looking it up and looking it up, that brings sometimes a certain level of anxiety, because as you do this research and as you plan and as you go through these things and making sure that you have everything that you need, check your
Yeah.
pockets. Like
Mm-hmm.
I literally wrote that down today. And I think that thought comes from just, how am I setting up myself to where this information that I get isn't just being hoarded? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a lot of people, just in general in the world listening, that's going to listen to this, have these gifts, have these talents, have and gifts that, literally God gave them, have physical gifts that we end up having to throw away because it's too much. And we, like, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
capacity, we have to excel. It's so I would
Yeah.
say yes, looking it up, but then also just making sure. I think I said it just now, exhaling
Mm-hmm.
and along the way, and that
Yeah.
meditation state of mind. And that doesn't look like any one given thing. Like, it might be a yoga pose today, but we were talking about this a little bit off air. It might be, going to the pool. Like Aiden and I, we did that, and that helped again with music and with stage presence and just with calming
Mm-hmm.
down. Um, Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be one thing all the time. And I have to become
Mm-hmm.
comfortable with that, because you would start getting stressed out about how you meditate. And then it's like, okay, so what's the point in that? So,
Right, because then that's like backfiring on you. So I like how you said, because Wesley, I think what you're doing here is helping people to see that we have to be balanced while we birth our gifts in that process. So, like for you, it sounds like it was a helpful thing to have that mindset of look it up, and it helped you to be analytical. I'm sure you came into the world analytical. I know I can only see you when you younger, 2 or 3. I bet you've always been just analytical and curious and wanting to know and understand things. So with your mom adding that on it, of nurturing that further for you, of encouraging you to look it up. And I'm pretty sure that out of only imagine that only further nurtured your analytical nature. So what you're saying with that, like do that, but at the same time, as we gather information, I like your practical tip you're giving people is to exhale it and
mhm.
to, hopefully, release it or birth it in a way that is, life-giving to you, and then life-giving hopefully to other people. And I
Yeah.
like how you saying it can be in a number of ways. It don't just have to be one way, but do it in a way that works for you. And hopefully, what I would say for birthing the gifts is hopefully blesses others too, whatever that kind of looks like, to release what you've been given.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
So what are the ways, Wesley, that you have released it? You've exhaled. What does that look like for you?
hmm. Hmm. That's good. Wow. So it's so many ways. So, not to sound like a, well, I'm gonna just speak. So
Yeah.
in certain ways, seeing it burn. Lyrically speaking, it's a lot of music just about fire. Dealing and talking to um Toya, the spirit of intimacy, when I'm reading that book, dealing with the years and the elements, 0, 5 being earth years, 1, 6 water, 2, 7 fire. So when I look into, and 3, 8 is nature, so this is a nature years. But when I'm looking into the element of fire, I'm
Mhm.
interested in that conversation. Partially because I like zodiac. I'm a Scorpio water, but we look a lot like fire. A lot of
Okay.
times, the way that our elemental breakdown makes sense. So I enjoy, for instance, watching leaves burn, because that's a process that's like, it can be quick, it can be slow, depending
Mhm.
on what's going on under that leaf. Does it have the oxygen to breathe out? Like, it's a lot that goes into that. Like, you can't just burn a whole bunch of leaves on top of each other without a wood substance or something that can help the fire breathe better. So
Mhm.
um fire for me is a lot of times interesting. And then switching over, like, I know a lot of people like reality show TV. I'm getting into that, but I really like, and we talked about this too, Arabian Nights. Like, I love fairy tales. I love, like, because they're so ghetto and dramatic, but they're a lot of times I read them in like a King James language, so it's like, what is this? Like, I see what's really going on right here. Like, these words fancy, but it's really like high drama. So I love reading those type of stories, because what it makes me do, when you see a certain stone that comes up today, for instance, when people talk about amethyst or myrtle, people
Mhm.
have these conversations today connected to a subject like a zodiac or a birthstone or whatever they want to say. Like, I look at it from, I'm reading these fairy tales and then I'm hearing humans talk about it in real life. So I'm having
Mhm.
animation come alive just in my head. So keeping the creativity nurtured, because what ends up happening is, as I go do those things, my taste buds change. I'm experiencing these
Mhm.
foods because they brought it to the Queen's Palace one day in the fairy tale.
Mhm.
So I release by just observing just what's around me, but then my literature, like, I love literature. I love a great story. I love short stories. I love fairy tales, and
Mhm.
yeah, I end up seeing
Yeah.
them back in real
Mm.
life.
Ah, I love it. I love it. I like how, Wesley, you're intertwining kind of how you birth your gifts while also kind of feeding yourself, right? So you said keeping the creativity nurtured. I like that part right there. So it's like you have multiple ways of keeping your creativity nurtured while at the same time, like, also continuing to walk down your path and birthing your gifts. Because you said you like fairy tales and short stories. And I think I heard you say a couple of different books that you've written. Did you say The Plant Doctor? I didn't even know all this. The Plant Doctor. And did you say Bullies? Was that the other kind of
Yeah,
book or something you're working on? So
the
tell
plant.
us about those. Why The Plant Doctor? Yeah, like what is that? Yeah.
So that's an interesting story. So the Plant Doctor came about. I wrote it in 2017. Came out with
Mhm.
it in 2019. It's about a boy named Ivory. He was just inquisitive in nature. He is asking about the neighborhood differences between where he lived versus where he ended up having to go to the dentist one day because he hurts his mouth on the playground. So um,
Mhm.
I think that character Ivory got me started just on my journey, because I'm literally going canvassing different places in Little Rock, and I'm seeing these dilapidated houses, and then I'm seeing $1 million houses, And so,
Mhm.
but these dilapidated houses are $1 million houses too. It's
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
about the energy that you decide to put into any given subject. So that I think the plant doctor, it just had just a huge impact on me in terms of how I see questioning, how I see poverty, how I see wealth, how I see, and if we include today, how I see birth and the gift. Because when you see the
Mhm.
different neighborhoods, Ivory, the main character, he's like, okay, I'm going to be a plant doctor. Because what his grandmother does was she compares, um, she talks about George Washington Carver and how he
Mhm.
got to Tuskegee, and it was really nothing, nothing as far as monetary benefits to help him on his journey of being, the instructor of the department he was over, agriculture department. So he
Mhm.
go to trash heaps, dig in the trash heaps, get stuff. So George Washington Carver was this innovative guy. Like, he was innovative. And so that was the plant doctor. Bullies, I was on the plant doctor tour, and I was at my cousin's school. So they was asking me about, writing books. They came up with the storyline of bullies kind of in a loose way, but I was asking them very strategic questions. So um bullies is that's, I don't know, it's not even out yet. Bullies is gonna be interesting because I don't have illustrations to it yet, but going
Okay.
back to the conversation that we were having earlier, it's written with music like in mind. So
Ah. Mhm.
I'm reading the story and the students are acting out what's going on. And that came from a time period when I was back in Iowa. We had an improv class. That's the best college class I ever had. The dude he did some theater work in New York. He came to class so serious every day. So he's like, he'll give you an F and fail you over how you are improv, because that's how you live your life. So I don't know,
Mhm.
but that's what bullies was kind of. I didn't want anybody to fall asleep on me again, but
Uh-huh.
it was student led conversation. So that those two literary projects definitely were some of my first. I do have other stuff that I've written. Me, Adasia Cooper, and I just released Arkansas Black History coloring book. Um,
Yes.
that's an interesting project. Like, that's an
Mhm.
interesting project. Just in the conversation of birthing your gift.
Mhm.
What I seen, I don't know if I'm using the right words right now. I'm supposed to be
Yeah,
illiterate,
just flow. Just flow. Yeah,
but
you're good.
when I peeped at um certain projects, they take a little longer, but
Mhm.
then sometimes you get to a point where it's like, now is the time for a lot of stuff to get released at the same time, and the waterways are perfectly right for a good flood to happen. Because,
Mhm.
like, it's not necessarily, floods are about irrigation systems. So if the water has places where it could travel, if the rivers can turn into streams back into, rivers back into streams, and it's
Mhm.
trails along the way for vegetation to happen, sometimes it's just the right time to do that
Mhm.
project. It might take you 10 days of breathe out. It might take you
Mhm.
10 to get it done, but on the other side, it's like, what in the
Mhm.
world? So that coloring
Mhm.
book is something that I wasn't thinking about necessarily. Miss Bradford, who's the Adasia's mom. Adasia's the illustrator. Miss Bradford kind of orchestrated this all together, where we had a project that's out now, done in like 10, 11 days. So I didn't think that. I was thinking when she reached out to me,
Mhm.
I had this project that I was thinking about. I'm thinking, okay, it'll be good by the fall or whatever. And she's like, okay, Black History Month is coming up, so let's go ahead and get it together. So I'm not saying to people that that's what you always do and that's how you always move, but sometimes the timing is right for that flood to go happen, and you have prepared yourself to the extent where, okay, you will apply for this grant and you will get that grant. So the
Right.
process is worth going through this time. So just
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just talking about literature. I'm talking about, business, like whatever it is, family. This time when you reach out to that person, y'all will mesh and it will click. Or this time when you reach out, it will be time to close the door. So just depending on where it's at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, it's like being sensitive to timing. I like how, because you said that, I think earlier, you said sometimes it's about, I think that's when we were talking about looking it up and going through your process, but you also said earlier that sometimes it is about the timing and just doing it. So it sounds like while people are in their process of birthing their gifts, it also requires a sensitivity to timing. What is the timing? And it may be the time to move forward and push it, or it may be a time to kind of pace yourself and kind of further equip yourself. And then maybe it'll, whatever it is you're doing will be released later. But with this coloring book, the timing was to go. So how can people, if people want to know more about this coloring book, can you give the name of it again and maybe how they could find the coloring book that you're talking about?
and see, that's why you the doctor. I'm gonna get the coloring book stuff, but that's why you the doctor. You put it all together, timing of it all, the time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't want to say man, the I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna give you the name. So go to
Okay.
AdajaStudios.com. That's where you get the coloring book from. It's the
Okay. Can you say it again? I think it went out for a second. Deja what? And how do you
Adaja,
spell it? Adaja? Yeah.
yeah, ADAJA Cooper Studios. Dot
Okay.
com. She actually she goes to Hendrick too. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
need to link up one day because she does. I was a fan of Adasia for a minute. Adasia has done some murals in Little Rock that I'm just like, what in the world? So um yeah,
So
she's
she's
real.
talented. It sounds like she's birthing her gifts
Nah,
out
yeah,
there. I love it. And this is a Black history book, and it focuses on Black people from Arkansas, right? Is that what you're saying? From Arkansas. Man, that's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I think actually I saw her. I think, was she a vendor at a recent event that you had in the community?
She
Uh,
we actually, and so by the time people see this tomorrow, I mean
uh,
yesterday, many yesterdays ago, but yesterday we did an event, um and she came and spoke on behalf, because we did this event for people who want to write books. So I guess people who want to birth their gifts as a published author. We did it
mm,
the first time January 21st, and then we did another one at the UAMS Black Expo yesterday. So
oh,
the
yeah.
Deja panel, she did real good. We did, I think, I want to say real good. You remember Miss Davis? She had a book, so she's come a long way with birthing her gift, and I'm extremely proud of her just because we met some years ago, and to see, I guess everybody who was around in that process are like those words, birthing the gift, like they bring strength. Because you see Marcus, he was on the panel, so with his vital,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
every that conversation
Mhm.
that you were bringing to the table 2 years ago is it's spring,
Right.
like.
Yeah. Awesome, awesome, man. You just listed so many. That just put a smile on my face. Like people just out there birthing their gifts and doing that. And Wesley, one of the things I like, so I attended one of your events, and then we're going to talk about what's your, because I think you have, I want to hear more about conducting creativity in Revolt Renaissance, if I have that right, and which is your publishing company, right? Is that, am I saying that right? That's a publishing company. Okay. So, but one of the things that I noticed when you had that event here in Little Rock, Arkansas, in the community where it was these vendors, these authors who just, I saw children, I saw adults, I saw families who were birthing their gifts by way of being an author. And it was just amazing to see. So I feel like you do a good job of like carving out these spaces. It seems like for people to come together and gather and then be encouraged to birth their gifts, especially in the realm of writing and creativity and music. And I feel like at least that's what I've observed. But like, if you could tell us, I think conducting creativity came first, right?
Mm.
Before. So can you tell us about how conducting creativity came about? Like when, how was that birth?
Yeah, cool. So the Plan Doctor came out 2019. The kids from my cousin's school that asked me how to write a book, that was in 2019. So by that summer, that was a universal between the conducting creativity members. There was a universal question that we were wanting to answer, because while we were going to these schools, that was an activity that we wanted to bring. While we was going to the summer, we wanted to bring how do you write your own book,
Mm-hmm.
so that was going on. But at the same time, we would link up with our friends in Conway, and we was just write. We had these what are they? It was like paper paper scripts. We just used to put it on the wall and write movies. We never came out with a movie, not yet, but we used to just do that as creative
Mm-hmm.
as to get our minds off of everything. So I
Right.
think the duality of those things at the same time kind of brought together conducting creativity, because I don't know, I was getting a little bit depressed going to conversations about the school to prison pipeline and hearing about all of these statistics.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to look at it from a different light, because my reality was I would go to these schools and the kids would be fighting, but they would be fighting over, hey, I want to talk about my book first. So they want to speak up about their project first. So they in third grade, they might hit each other or, call somebody a name. They don't mean nothing by it. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
that means that they have that vigor and they want to
Mm-hmm.
their gifts out because they're noticing something. They're like, oh, okay. They sit there and tell each other stories all day anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do when they get in the car. They're griots, they're storytellers. Here are the skills
Mm-hmm.
that you need. So conducting creativity was birthed out of just that question that the kids was asking, how do we write our own book? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it
Okay. And is that what conducting creativity kind of helps with, or like what's the main focus or mission of conducting creativity?
that's definitely one of them. So the kids were asking about how do you write your books. The people our age were asking about entrepreneurship. Was I was by no means an expert, still not an expert. All I did was if I went to something that was interesting, or I thought about one of my homeboys or one of my homegirls in that moment, just shoot it to them, boom, and now they have the information. So and then we have conversations too. So um it was conducting creativity focused on literacy, innovation, and entrepreneurship. I want like going back to the fairy tales when you see, well, not even the fairy tales, going back to what really the actual things. So when you look at these pyramids and the golden caps that used to be on top of the pyramids, and when the sun
Mm-hmm.
hits the golden cap, that created irrigation systems in the given city. It created electricity in the given city. So I love innovation, because when people talk about hydroponics and growing plants in a different way and recycling, I'm like, okay, that's going back to George Washington Carver. That's going back to the first conversation that I was having in terms of
Mm-hmm.
on a literary level. So I just
Mm-hmm.
conducting creativity, yeah, it's focused on literacy, innovation, and entrepreneurship, but it meets and merges them in the middle.
Yes.
So, because
Mm-hmm.
everything has literacy in it, everything,
Mm-hmm.
you as a person are innovative. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So it's really it's those three categories, but also the integration of all of those, the merging together of all of those in all of our lives. I love it. I love it. So when did then so if that's one thing that you're doing. Now, what made you decide to now do a publishing company? Like Revolt Renaissance. And I love that name. So if you could talk about like where did that like how did that come up, I guess, in your spirit and your mind, Revolt Renaissance? And I want to hear a little bit about where the name came from too.
Okay, so the name is interesting. I'm a I'm an African studies major in terms of just I want to say Toya gets me on this conversation. It's not about necessarily the college credentials, is about life. So in school
Absolutely.
at
So I'm gonna pause for a second just so folks know Toya is a mutual friend of ours.
yeah,
And when I met Wesley, I also met Toya. Toya and Wesley were both very instrumental in me birthing this gift of this nonprofit. So Toya helped a lot with that in her company, Balance Communication. So Toya is a mutual friend of ours. I just want to shed light on that and give a shout out to her for her
uh,
role in this
so
process. All right, go ahead. Yeah.
shout out to Auntie. But yeah, so the revolt aspect of it for me, when you look into the Haitian Revolution against the French, and I just been seeing this conversation come up a lot more, but it was a very much spiritual thing that had to happen in order for them to rebel against the French. So the revolutionary part of it has to do with and this happened after the fact, but I'll just share this with you. I was talking to Desiree's grandma, my cousin Desiree. Her grandma is my aunt. So she said when she went to one of these events that we did, we invited the authors. We work with primarily Black authors. She came, she was like, I would have never thought growing up in the 70s that I would see Black people influencing education like this. So the Renaissance part comes for me because I know in the midst of the Renaissance, that's what we were really aiming to do on an intellectual level. We were writing books, we were writing curriculums. Like we've always done these things, but at the same time, the revolt aspect comes back because it's like we've already done this before. So
Mm-hmm.
um revolting the thinking that I'm the first one that's done it. You know, like
Okay.
humbling myself, like in the aspect of knowing like just because somebody might not have seen it in this lifetime or in their lifetime doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, because I feel like if I become humble in that way, I can get a lot further because I'm not thinking that I'm sitting here rediscovering the wheel. It's more so like, no, you observe that those kids do actually indeed want to be creative. A lot of times, people around them already know that, they just don't feel as equipped or they lack the resources
Mm-hmm.
that they need. So start looking at it from that way as opposed to you just discovered the wheel, because you did. Speaking
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of how me and Chris Kroon, who's the CEO, came up with the name Revolt Renaissance.
Oh, wow. It is such a story behind it. It's such a story. Also, thank you for sharing that. So with Revolt Renaissance, what is it that you all like? Are there certain types of books that you all lean towards publishing? And if so, what types of books would that be?
Um, so not necessarily. We haven't actually come out and say we want clients.
Okay.
What we're really doing, we don't refuse clients, but what we're really doing is conducting creativity, is coming and saying, okay, we want to strengthen the aesthetic, the
Um,
we want to strengthen, not even necessarily strengthen the aesthetic, the reasoning why you believe the way that you believe. No matter what you believe whatever, but at the same time, go into and diversify your taste palette, because when you bring that back to your writing, now as a publishing company, as an up and coming publishing company, that strengthens us, because they like, when they read your stuff, they're like, oh shoot, you know what I'm saying, I need this story. So I think for us it's about that, but at the same time it's about, we want to revolt the myth that you can't use your own voice. So in music, for instance, they say, you know, if I sing like this, or if I come out and I do a love song, they don't want to hear no love song. They only want to hear this. Okay, but you never came out with a love song. Like, you just fed into the. I get why, you know what I'm saying, and we don't have to talk about. Say I get why, but at the same time, like, we want to make room for that. Like, you want to wear pink hair today, cool. Let's do it. That's what gonna be about. But when it hits the taste buds, is it giving the flavor that you wanted it to give, and why? You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah, it seems like that does in some ways. I can see how that could strengthen the message and allow the message to reach more people, if I'm understanding you correctly. If the creative person themselves, the writer, the speaker, whatever it is they're doing, they are getting to know more parts of them, and like you say, expanding their taste palette, becoming more creative, all of that, then it sounds like you're saying, then that's gonna come out in whatever creative project that they produce. Like, it's going to come through that and reach people in more powerful ways.
No, for
Which
sure.
is
For sure.
lovely.
I think the communal piece to it is like, okay, the first step is just exposing. Like, in my mind, you have to destroy the myth that it doesn't exist. Like, you hear so many people say, I don't, it's not that many Black authors. They're all on Facebook. Like, they Black authors groups are on Facebook live and active today with a whole bunch of members, and there's Black bookstores all over the United States. Now, how can we identify exactly where they are and choose which one is the best for you? Like, that's another conversation, but they do exist. Therefore, here's the exposure piece of it. So after the exposure piece, it's like, okay, now that we have a community of writers, how then can we edify their writer in a way that, you know, we don't need no more stale writing. You know, we don't need any more bad illustrations. Speaking to myself too, sometimes it is time to slow down as you birth that gift. So we're really focusing on that, and that's, I guess, where the emergence of Revolt Renaissance, well, conducting creativity, number one, let's build this up, let's put strength behind it, but then we needed a platform to publish, so Revolt Renaissance. But then that other piece, Marcus has been, another mutual friend, Marcus has been a tremendous help behind the events. So the book fair, the panel yesterday, the authors events for the community, for them to learn how to write a book. Because Marcus made a big point yesterday when he was talking. He was like, how are you going to write a book when you constipated? So Marcus with herbs and health and wellness in that way. So everybody has obviously a chosen path, but just making sure the health and wellness aspect is added to your writing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the healthier you are, I mean, I love that. How can you birth your gifts, write your book, do what you're going to do if we're not at least striving to focus on our health and wellness holistically? So I know Mark is, I'm sure he talks about it holistically because I've heard him talk and I love what he does. I'm going to have to interview him one of these days. I love what he does with Vital Vibes. But like thinking about our holistic health and wellness, spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically, socially, financially, right? So as much as we can in all areas, I love it. Focus on our health and wellness so we can birth our gifts. I think that's great. Wesley, what would you say for people, be it young people, adults? It may be somebody that's 60 years old to say, hey, I've been having a book in me all these years and I have not put it out there. Where should somebody just start? Say it's just in them, is in their mind and their heart, but they hadn't put pen to paper, nothing. where do you suggest that they start?
I would say doing what you just said, just starting. Don't overanalyze. Just start. Like you have the book inside of you. As soon as you write it down, it's outside of you. So there it is. So at that point of time, now you have a decision to make. Do you want to push it forward? You know, and how are you going to push it forward? So uh get around people who celebrate you for doing your God-given talents, and at the same time challenge you to go further. Who expect the best out of you, but at the same time they allow you to define what it is, that this is what makes me the best. This is where I am the best. So you need advocates. In
Mhm.
any process that you have, you need advocates. So, and then finding
Mhm.
you a good mentor, like as much as you can, go to, when you travel, go find, like, especially on the weekends, a lot of bookstores, black bookstores do this for sure. Book signings, go to a book signing in your local community, wherever you are. Find the closest place where you can find a person who you relate to, whether it's you look like them or they write on a topic that you're interested in. Go to different book signings and then go just network, learn, but at the same time, just continually come back to your work if you really want to get a finished product out of you. And I always say this: invest in a quality illustrator, as well as a person who can really edit your work in the voice that you want it to be perceived in. So I
Mhm.
would, but just do it. Like you said, just
Mm.
do it. Don't worry about how long it is. Just do it. Read it out loud. When it's time for you to say the end, it'll click inside of you and you'll have your first book.
Man, I love it. They gave people some practical tips. Get started, and also people they can connect with and network with as well. I think that that's great. So Wesley, if people want to continue to kind of hear from you, maybe attend some of your events in the community, see what Conducting Creativity is doing, how can they stay connected with what you have going on?
So yeah, for sure. So I'm on Instagram. My first Instagram got hacked, but I'm on Instagram. I'm big underscore 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 West. So big three underscores West. Um, Revolt Renaissance right now is kind of hosting the collaborative events that we're doing between Conducting Creativity and some of even Vital Vibes. So if you want to go to the a website, go to www.revoltrenaissancepublishing, all the full words.com. Um, and again, the coloring books are AdejaCooperStudios.com. So check out the Black History coloring books for sure, because like I said, those I just would have never imagined. So
Mhm.
didn't ask this, but just please do it. Like she said, birth your gift, just please do it, because there's so many people that need it.
Yes, I love it. It's so many people that need it. That's good right there. That's good. Wesley, thank you again for sharing your process and sharing your story, all your projects that you're working on. So we look forward to what Conducting Creativity in Revolt Renaissance continues to do. So it's been another edition of Birthing the Gifts. It's a Process Conversation series. Again, thank you for joining us today, Wesley. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.